This is what the globalists want.
Yeah.
Don't do it. They literally shut down your churches and push the officials in charge of the churches to make you believe that church doesn't matter.
Yeah.
To make you believe that this is secondary, or you can just pray at home, or you don't actually have to gather. They undermined what church was, and church officials allowed it to happen. People have not returned back, and we saw that. This was representative, like more than, from what I'm hearing, it's like half the people never went back to church afterwards. Pews are empty. Places are cutting worship, cutting mass, cutting service, whatever it may be. March for Life on Thursday was a reflection of the successful campaign to sort of undermine, and it's as much a successful campaign as it is a failing on the part of church leaders to advocate for their people, to be there for their people. And in a time where we saw mental health crises, we saw loss to COVID-19 as well, but to other illnesses, whatever it may be, the church was not there for people. They didn't fight for people to be able to have decent funerals while people were packed into airplanes like sardine cans. They weren't there. They weren't going to bat. They kind of felt faded. So the people that were there very much were those people who are going to be there, the advocates, the fighters, the people who are in this and here to stay. Ratzinger sort of talked about the time where the church becomes very small and solidified. Well, those people, whatever their sort of denominations, not necessarily to say they're Christian, but whatever their faith backgrounds, they were out. There was still 300, 400 people, maybe something like that. Somewhere in that range. We kind of guessed. It was kind of hectic. But yeah, it was definitely sad to see, because like normally it's buses are showing up and there's thousands of people. But we got a couple hundred people instead. So, but still the mood was very positive, very happy. The footage we're seeing now is from the Calgary pro-abortion protest that happened on Sunday as well. But there were quite a few actually counter-protesters there as well. Again, it's interesting. We talked to a whole bunch of people, and you'll see this in the video, from the pro-life side. And we actually said, well, do you think there's more effective ways that the pro-abortion people could engage in dialogue or conversation? Do you think them playing lewd music is maybe not appropriate given that there's children around? It was incredible just how freedom loving these people were. They said, no, I think it's their right to do that. Like literally no one was even like, they could be more respectful. Like we were giving them an opportunity to say, I don't think that's very nice. They're like, no, it's their right. It's like the universal sentiment we got from people. Very interesting as well to see some of the politicians present. This extends to Calgary as well, but there was a little bit of a heated conflict and a little bit of bumping here and there, but it dissipated pretty quickly. They were chanting their slogans, they were dancing, playing music really loud, trying to drown out the pro-life message. The pro-lifers largely ignored them and sort of did their thing as well. One thing that was incredibly interesting, other than one journalist from Western Standard and ourselves, there was virtually no media coverage that we saw whatsoever. If there was another independent journalist there, I apologize. We saw no one. Conversely, jump to the pro-abortion, pro-choice, whatever you want to call it, rally in Calgary on Sunday. We saw like every major mainstream media outlet there as well. There's also a concerted effort by the organizers. They were very polite, like everyone was being cordial, but if anyone was willing to speak to us, they'd come over and tell them not to speak with us, sort of thing. So we tried speaking to about 15 people, and then we're just like, okay, we're not going to be able to talk to anybody at all. But very interesting to see the politicians who show up. We saw in Edmonton, Janice Irwin, who we've weirdly run into quite a few times. She attended, interestingly enough, though, and much to her credit, when some of the counter protesters kind of started getting shovey and a bit much, she immediately moved away from them and didn't want to be associated with that. We tried to get an interview with her, obviously, to discuss Bill 17. Wasn't willing to do that, but that's all right. And then we did have a chance, though, which will be in the video, to talk to Dan Williams, MLA for Peace River, and then Joseph Scow, MLA for Cardston-Siksika. So we did get those perspectives. In Calgary, Jyoti Gondek and Giancarlo showed up, of course. And then we also saw Ganley, the NDP MLA for Rock Mountain View. I think that's Kathleen. I don't know. Sorry. Kathleen Ganley. Okay, good. So they were there. They gave speeches as well. So quite the scene, but it was so interesting to see all these media outlets for the maybe 100 people that showed up for this pro-abortion thing. Even March for Life being small, it was 3-4 times the size. There was action, there was counter protests, no media there to cover it whatsoever. So yeah, something to see, certainly.
You know, Adam, I think I agree with your assessment of why the March for Life was so small. And it is that so many people, they were told by the government and by their own churches, by the churches going along with the government, that church was unnecessary and
Mhm.
that you can get everything you need on Facebook Live Church.
Yeah.
And so if I am told that I can receive communion on Facebook Live, which I can't, but if I'm told that, then why do I necessarily have to be out in the streets advocating for the rights of the unborn? Why
Yeah.
can't I just do it on Facebook Live, right? Like
Exactly.
why can
Tweet
I
it.
why can't I just share a meme? That's as good as actually being present. Um,
Yeah.
and yeah, people feel there are other people, maybe I'm one of them, that feels betrayed by their church and how quickly the church capitulated to the
Yeah.
government. But I also remember that the church is populated by human beings, and human beings are flawed, and we have actually a built-in sacrament to deal with how flawed human beings are and how they get them wrong. It's called reconciliation. So I have that constant reminder that, yeah, people who are running the church are going to get it wrong, but it is God's church. So I can't let the
Yeah.
betrayal of the men get in between me and my relationship with God. But yeah, when you go to mass these days, it's all just people who can't figure out how to use YouTube. Like it's all
Yeah.
it's not the same way it used to be. There are
Or the
certain
diehards.
masses, yeah, or yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, the diehards. But it's not a place where you can just pop into anymore. Even
Yeah.
it was difficult for me because sometimes I would be like, okay, well, I'm just going to pop into the church. I'm going to say a quick decade of the rosary and then carry on my day. I couldn't do that anymore. There was
Yeah.
no like spontaneity in I've got 10 minutes. I'm just going to quickly run into church as I'm waiting on a kid to finish something. I couldn't do that anymore. I had to, check in, contact trace. It was just a real pain to do it, and it just drives people away, and it changes how their involvement in the church as a building. It becomes
Yeah.
weird and confrontational all the time and explanatory all the time. It's not easy.
No.
Now, like we're Christians, it's not supposed to be easy, but it just drove a wedge in between people and the church. And I can see why that is hurting now the causes that flow from the church.
Yeah.